Hello and welcome to the Secular Nation Podcast, brought to you by the Atheist Alliance of America. I am your host, Tim Brannon. My usual co-host, Michael X, could not be here. You just listened to Happiness Writes White by Harvey Danger. Before we get to our guest, as a program note, the Secular Nation Podcast now has its own email address. That's podcast@secularnation.us. So if you're a fan of the show, or even if you hate the show, you can send us an email, and we might read it on the podcast. You get your email read, we get some free content for the show. Everybody wins. Okay, and I'm here today with my guest, GuyPHarrison, author of the other famous trilogy of books whose titles all start with the number 50. Guy, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now again, okay, you have your new book out, the trilogy I'm obviously referring to is your series of 50 reasons people give for believing in God, 50 popular beliefs people think are true, and your latest one, 50 simple questions for every Christian. So I think, well, before we get into that, I thought I'd get more into your background, because, I mean, the stuff I've read about, like, your little autobiographical snippets and the stuff I read on your website, I get this idea of some sort of, like, Doc Savage, world-traveling adventurer, you know? I say you even kind of got the name for it. Like, I could totally see you, like, on a pulp novel or a serial, like, Guy Harrison and the Golden Temple of Xioshomequalexis.
I wish, man. I wish. Yeah, well, my academic background's in history and anthropology. I've always been very, very curious about the world, the universe, science, people, and how weird people are. I mean, we are a bizarre species. We're so capable. We have so much potential. We've achieved so much, yet we're so nutty and just strange, you know? So
Oh,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm happy to be on Strange Frequencies right now to talk about how bizarre we are. So, I mean, this natural curiosity that I've just always had since childhood has just led me to pay close attention to my species and all the kookiness they get up to, and to always ask questions and I just haven't been afraid to wonder about things and say, well, why do you do that? Well, how do you know that? Why should I believe that? And so my skepticism just sort of grew within me, kind of a natural process. I'm not sure how exactly it happened. And so eventually I got to a point where I realized from, mainly traveling really and seeing much of the world and talking to many, many people and seeing and realizing that, we've got a lot of problems on this planet, and many of them could be solved, if not significantly improved, if people were only good skeptics. If people just tried to think like a scientist in everyday life, we could eliminate about 90% of the madness that plagues us. And so this frustration, this concern for my fellow humans has motivated me to write these kind of books where I'm not really arguing at people. I'm not preaching at them. I'm just saying, hey, hold on, pause. Let's think about this. What is going on? Before you hate, before you kill, before you say no to science and progress, let's think about whether or not maybe possibly you could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I really like about your books, is that, like, as much as, books like The God Delusion or not, they sort of profess to be sort of reaching out towards the believing audience, I really feel that there is a genuine, like, outreach in your books towards a believing audience.
Yeah, I mean, I like The God Delusion and other
Hmm.
books like that. I mean, I'm a fan of those books. I'm definitely not opposed to them in
Yeah,
any way.
yeah. Hmm.
And the thing is, and I hope I don't come across as wimpy or too soft, because I think I can be just as strong as anyone. I have
Hmm.
many times, confronted very belligerent, stubborn people who are pushing nonsense on others. So I'm not afraid of confrontation or anything. I just try my best to be effective and to really reach people and get into their heads and get them to think for themselves. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to beat people up and paint them into a corner where they got to admit they're wrong and I'm right. I'm trying to inspire people and to, maybe show them the tools that can help them get on the right track themselves. I'm not trying to slap people. I'm trying to offer them a hand. I'm just trying to be a friend. That's the point of my books.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's sort of an interesting anecdote I wanted to get into because, all right, when I bought your first, well, book in that series, the reasons people give for believing in God, I was reading it at work, and I had a Christian friend who was kind of like, "Oh, can I look at that sometime?" I'm like, "Yeah, totally." Like as soon as I finish it, and I mean, it never really came to anything, but I always kept it in my car. Just like that one day, like if he says, "Hey Tim, you still got that book?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, here it is." But an interesting thing is because I got the copy of your new book in the mail, and I was at the diner reading it, and like the waitress just came in. I was like, "Huh, that looks kind of interesting. Can I borrow that?" And I'm just like, "I have this other book in my car," and I just ran out and grabbed it and I lent it to her. And actually, just if I could go off on a tangent, one of the things I think we're sort of losing in the publishing industry is moving from away from the dead tree publishing to the ebooks. Is we don't have the opportunity to like have books and lend them out to people to share that information.
Yeah, that's a concern of mine as well. I mean, I love the tangible, the physical book. I'm a
Hmm.
book lover, but I also love the convenience, and I love the just the potential of digital books,
Hmm.
e-readers and all that. That's a great thing. I'm definitely not against that, but I really love the to just hold a book in your hand. And like you said, one of the best things about a book is you can say, "Hey, let me give you this gift. I'm handing you something of substance," you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
even if we get to a point where you can easily share digital books without freaking out the publishing industry, which is a challenge. Even then, I mean, you get a batch of ones and zeros. I don't know. It doesn't feel the same. It's not like
Yeah.
holding a book. And that's one of the selling points of these books. I think that's one reason they've been successful is that I wrote them in a way where I think any skeptic, any non-believer, anyone who wants to maybe, spark some thoughts in a friend or a family member, somebody they care about,
Hmm.
you can hand them one of my books and not worry about really enraging them or, just offending them. I mean, yes, I do offend some people, but my God, some people are offended no matter what you do.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, like the current book, the one that just came out, 50 Simple Questions for Every Christian,
Hmm.
that one's not even written as, here's the skeptical argument against all the claims of Christianity. It's not even really like that. I position the whole book in a way where this is an explanation of what skeptics are thinking about your religion. If you want to understand 2 out of 3 people in the world and understand why 2 out of 3 people in the world are not convinced by Christianity. Why is it they don't believe Jesus is God? And why is it they don't accept the Bible is true? Well, here are 50 of the most common reasons. These are the things that pop up in the minds of skeptics when you're trying to sell them on Christianity. And if you want to understand other people, you need to understand this because unfortunately, preachers are many preachers, not all, are constantly filling Christians with these nonsense ideas about why people reject Christianity. They're angry at God. They just want to be immoral. They're rebellious. All these kind of, standard reasons that the majority of Christians put forward constantly as the reason why there are such a thing as atheists in the world. And of course, non-believers know that's nonsense. We're not angry at a God who we are not convinced exists. It doesn't make any sense. So I explain these things in the hopes of maybe lessening a bit of the intolerance and prejudice and real stupidity that exists in this canyon between believers and non-believers because it's really terrible. I mean, I cite many studies in the book that show, for example, the majority of Christians in America uh, don't want they would not vote for an atheist candidate, regardless of their policies or background or whatever credentials. If they're an atheist, no, not getting my vote. And they are more likely to vote for, say, a gay candidate or a Muslim candidate, even given all the prejudice they tend to have against those people. An atheist is bottom of the barrel, just because they're an atheist, and that's nonsense.
Hmm.
They associate their religion with morality and think if you don't have their religion, therefore you're immoral by definition. And I address all those problems and try to explain why that is not true. And also one study, very disturbing, is that the majority of people in America who believe in a God, which would be Christians, because of America, the way belief breaks down, associate atheists with criminals, including rapists, more than they do with any other unpopular group, which is absolutely staggering when you think about that. Just because you're skeptical, you're a critical thinker, and you're not convinced that Christianity is true, even if you have an open mind, you think the evidence falls short, so you're not convinced, and so by definition, therefore, you're an atheist. Well, that makes you, in league with rapists. I mean, it's crazy. And
Hmm.
so I'm trying to just enlighten Christians a bit about who these non-believers really are and what skeptical thinking is really about, and how we are not these evil monsters that just can't, we want to rob banks and attack children, so therefore we're atheists. I mean, it's crazy, and I'm trying to hopefully chip away a bit at that. And if I was a Christian missionary, I'm not trying to sell books here, but if I was a Christian missionary, this is the first book I'd read, because these are the questions you need to answer. If you really want to convince thinking people, if you want to convert thinking people, you've got to meet these challenges, and you've got to know what's popping up in the minds of these skeptics.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, because again, I think as you said, it's really you're not really attacking. You're just you are raising the questions. Like what are miracles? Like there's a lot of chapters I really kind of linked onto when I was reading, like specifically the one that says like what is a Christian? Because to me that is kind of the focal point of this whole issue of whether or not we're a Christian nation. I mean, obviously we're not, but even if we were, I have to imagine, what about all the Christians that certain Christians don't count as Christians?
Yeah, well, yeah, the chapter is who is a Christian, and
Yeah.
I just point out the fact that in the way you can't really you can't lump all atheists into one
Mm-hmm.
type of person. It's just the absence of belief, really, and after that, all bets are off, anything goes. But for Christianity, it's a hugely successful religion, most popular in the world today, with 2.3 billion people who call themselves Christians. And that's impressive in one sense, but then in another sense, not really, because there are so many contradictions, so many
Mm-hmm.
divisions. There are more than 30,000 distinct versions of Christianity today, probably more if you really nitpicked. And if you ask, I have talked to these Christians, if you ask one group of Christians, who is a real Christian, they'll say, well, we are, and those people over there are heading straight to hell. They are doing it all wrong. I mean, the standard divide, the most common divide, is Catholics and Protestants.
Mm-hmm.
Not all, but many Protestants say, oh, the Catholics are all a bunch of um, uh, statue worshiping, superstitious, completely, they've lost their way, and they're
Mm-hmm.
doomed. They're worshiping the Pope and not
Yeah.
God, and they've got it all wrong. And then Catholics say, oh, no, 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 we are the real Christians. We're doing it as it was done, as it should be done. And these Protestants are some offshoot, and they've completely lost their way. Their allegiances are all wrong, and they could be in trouble one day on Judgment Day. So I mean, you go on and on and on. And the thing is, who is really right? The problem for them, of course, is that when you're dealing with a belief system that's not based on evidence and logic, but
Mm-hmm.
more on faith and tradition and that kind of stuff and revelation, well, nobody can ever really prove their case fully. You're always going to have conflict and contradiction, and so I just and that's one thing in the book too. I really tried hard not to upset Christians by pretending that they're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
I always am careful about my words. Many Christians, some Christians, most Christians. I always qualify, and I make a distinction. I know that not all Christians think the earth is 6,000 years old. Many do, about
Yeah.
46% in America, for example. That's
Wow.
frighteningly large number. But uh, I understand some Christians are not anti-science. In fact, some Christians are scientists. Very good scientists. So I'm completely aware of this. But it's a good thing and a bad thing with all that diversity.
Mm-hmm.
It exposes a lot of illogical just contradictions that they need to really address. And it also, diversity is a cool thing. It's good that they're thinking and all, but they
Mm-hmm.
need to think more, and that's what I'm trying to encourage.
Oh yeah. I mean, on that same line, I mean, can one truly be a Christian and a skeptic?
Sure, sure. In fact, I encourage. I don't even remember what chapter it is right now, but I think it's. Is it rude to even ask? I think I asked this question about the whole question of skepticism and Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
because unfortunately, many Christians, and I have bumped into this head first many times, and it just frustrates me so much. They are encouraged, if not forbidden, to think skeptically, to be
Mm-hmm.
critical thinkers. They're told, don't even question that, don't even go there. Some
Mm-hmm.
preachers actively warn their congregations against thinking too much, against asking questions. Just believe, just have faith. That's their mantra. And so I'm saying, no, 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 that's completely wrong. And here's the angle I took to try to be as productive and helpful as I could. I said, look, you want to be a good skeptic, whether you're a
Mm-hmm.
Christian or not. And if you can't can't even conceive of living your life without Jesus and giving up the church and all that, okay, fine, keep it. If you need it that bad, I say keep it, hold on to it, no problem. I want you to feel good and be happy. And if you're absolutely certain you've got to have it, then keep it. However, you still want to be a good skeptic. Even if you're a good skeptic right up to the doorstep of Jesus, then do it, because who can deny that Christians are not exploited, abused, and ripped off and waste tons of time every day of the year by not being good skeptics? Because within Christianity, there are con artists, there are crooks,
Mm-hmm.
there are faith healers, and the majority of Christians agree with me on this.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of Christians can watch a typical one of these TV preachers that's saying, give me money, I need more money,
Mm-hmm.
these jets ain't going to pay for themselves, I need your money, give more, give more. And the majority of Christians in America would probably say, hey, that guy's a crook. Well,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? You're being a skeptic right now. You are asking questions, analyzing his claims, and saying, you know what? By me sending him $20 and him sending me a little vial of miracle water and sprinkling it on my forehead, that probably won't get me a better job, so maybe I shouldn't do it. Well, you're being skeptical. That's a good thing. If some guy says, you know, don't go to the hospital if you got cancer, come to my crusade tonight and I'll lay hands on you. Forget the chemotherapy. Don't do it. Just come to me. Well, you know what? Most Christians are going to go to the hospital. Okay. They may pray, but they're going to go to the hospital and listen to what medical science has to say. Now, that's critical thinking. Okay, you're being a skeptic, at least partially, and that's what I encourage. So Christians, I could not emphasize this any stronger. You need to be good skeptics, and
Mm-hmm.
even if you can't apply it directly to your God, okay, fine, but apply it to everything else in your life. Because I don't care about Christians any less than I care about everybody else. I don't want them wasting their money, wasting their time, wasting their good health on people who are either nuts or they're just outright crooks. So
Yeah.
I want them to be good skeptics too.
Yeah, and that sort of brings to mind the recent case with the Philadelphia couple. Have you heard about that?
They lost another child, those
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I give examples of that. How faith healing. I mean, it kills. I mean,
Oh,
I've a previous
exactly.
book I wrote about how alternative medicine, the whole thing. When you're not a good skeptic, watch out. No less than Steve Jobs. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
nobody would call
Oh,
him a
yeah.
complete idiot, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he was a smart guy, but he, in his final days, he told at least two people very close to him, his best friend and his biographer.
Mm-hmm.
He told them, hey, I blew it, by trusting in
Mm.
a bunch of new age alternative medicine nonsense. I wasted valuable time that I probably had a good shot of having, real doctors save my life, and
Yeah.
it's too late. I blew it, because he wasn't a good skeptic at that moment in his life.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my view of the alternative naturopathic homeopathic medicines. Is a lot of the advocates will cite some alleged malfeasance by pharmaceuticals or modern,
Right, right,
which
right.
may or may not be accurate. But again, they're saying the solution is to, get rid of, the actual scientific verification. Like the way I see it, it's they're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They're throwing out the baby, keeping the bathwater, and then diluting the bathwater a million times and selling it as a contraceptive because the water has memory and it remembers the baby, unlike yours
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Yeah, couldn't agree more, man. It's terrible because, yeah, in my book 50 popular beliefs that
Mm-hmm.
people think are true, I have a chapter on alternative medicine, and I talk about how, you've got to, you just brought up one.
Yeah.
You got to think what these people are saying. Just
Mm-hmm.
because they cite a few examples of people who took a potion and got better doesn't mean anything. You need proper double-blind scientific testing. Just because somebody said, "Oh, medical science is lame," the healthcare industry sucks. My doctor doesn't pay any attention to me. He treats me
Mm-hmm.
like I'm a car in for an oil checkup or something.
Mm-hmm.
Checking my oil. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, all those things are right. You're right. Modern healthcare sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance companies are ripping us off.
Yeah.
Pharmaceutical companies are, many of them are sleazy scumbags who care more about profit than saving human lives. Sure, absolutely, I agree. But that doesn't mean you go run to a witch doctor and drink some herbal potion that's going to cure you.
Mm-hmm.
You still got to stick with medical science because time has proven, history has proven medical science actually works. It's not perfect, absolutely not perfect, but it works better than anything else we have. So it's
Absolutely.
same with prayer. I mean, I have a chapter on prayer and faith
Hmm.
healing in this book, and I just point out, it's so easy for us as humans to be led astray, confirmation bias, faith and tradition, listening to authority figures, all these kind of things. They set us up to fall for things like prayer heals, prayer works. The faith healer healed me. I feel better. I explain how these things almost surely are really working, and how almost certainly it's not because of supernatural magical things happening. And one tone throughout all my books as well, I'll just add real quick, is that I'm sympathetic with people who
Hmm.
believe this, because they're just being humans. These are not
Yeah.
dumb people. These are not idiots we should be scoffing at and looking down at. Not at all. We're
Hmm.
all in this boat together as humans. We all have human brains that are susceptible to this nonsense, that can easily fall prey to these side streets of madness. It's nothing
Absolutely.
special. Yeah, and being a good skeptic, the first step is just acknowledging I am a human with a human brain. Therefore, I've got one foot in fantasy land already,
Mhm.
and I need to start thinking better, or I'll be in trouble the rest of my life. That's all it is.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I kind of see in the specific skeptic, not necessarily atheist community, that there's sometimes a resistance towards talking about religion when we talk about skepticism.
Yeah, not me, man, because
Yeah.
I address that as well. A lot of skeptics, they go, they're wicked, they're brutal when it comes to UFOs and Bigfoot and the psychics. They knock them down, knock them down. But then they come to religion. Well, that's a little too personal. We don't want to go there. Mainly because they're afraid of getting beat up by the pack, the posse,
Hmm.
which outnumbers them. And I believe me, I more than most, I understand that concern, because I've been outnumbered all my life. As a person who's been skeptical of religious claims, whether I'm in the Middle East, or I'm in India, or I'm in Africa, or I'm in the Caribbean, or I'm in the United States, I'm always outnumbered everywhere I go. So I understand that. However, I just think you've got to go that extra step, and you got to be consistent, and you've got to apply skepticism everywhere. That's the ideal good skeptic, is one who doesn't stop anywhere. You keep asking questions, you keep demanding evidence, you keep wondering, and you keep doubting, because that's the moment you become inconsistent is the moment you get a little vulnerable, and something might creep in on you. So you need to do it. You really do. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, why wouldn't I keep going with my skepticism? Because I don't care about religious people any less than I do everybody else. I mean, people who believe in UFOs, and they're, or somebody who believes in psychics and is blowing $500 a month on some psychic, to
Yeah.
tell them things about themselves they already know, and to make up stuff about their future. I mean, that's tragic, and I'm going to encourage that person to rethink what they're doing. But why would I not also encourage somebody who's given $500 to their local church, when maybe they're struggling and they're not,
Hmm.
supplying their children with the things they need? Maybe they,
Are you there?
yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
You lose me? Oh, what up?
I don't know.
Lost me?
You just kind of cut off for a second. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, yeah, so skepticism should not stop at religion's doorstep. I mean, a skeptic should not care any less about religious people than they do everyone else. And by the way, any skeptic who says, well, religion is such a personal and such a passionate topic that we don't really want to upset them, and it's impolite to go there, so let's just stick to UFO believers and psychics and all that. Well, that doesn't make sense either, because I have met people who believe in UFOs, or believe in ESP, or believe in psychics just as passionately as someone else may believe in Jesus or the Quran or something.
Hmm.
So you could be offending and upsetting someone by doubting UFO sightings just as much as you would by doubting prayer or faith healing. So that doesn't really work anyway. So I say push skepticism anywhere and everywhere you can, with anyone you can, because you're doing them a favor by doing so.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the classic skeptical issues like UFOs and ghosts and Nostradamus, like, I mean, other than like the psychic, they don't really require any kind of investment. So it's sort of easy to just offhandedly criticize, but when it's actually something that like affects the lives of millions of people every day, and that they put all this money and time and effort and energy into it, I mean, I'm not gonna say it's never happened, but I've never heard of like a father disowning his son because he doesn't believe in Bigfoot.
I don't know. It could happen though. Things
Yeah.
could happen. I've seen, I mean, absolutely agree with you. However, I've crossed paths with some people who are very, very passionate about their belief in
Mm-hmm.
magic or even UFOs or
Yeah.
alien abductions, that kind of thing. So you can find passion and commitment anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to these irrational beliefs, you really can.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. If very few wars have been launched over Bigfoot belief, so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's a difference. Religion is a much, much greater challenge than
Yeah, because I think
yeah,
even the people who are like passionate about UFOs, they're still sort of like the outliers. I mean, there's
yeah.
just people you meet every day, and it's like, yeah, I believe in not UFOs or whatever, but there's not this big structure that's saying you have to
Right.
believe in UFOs.
Well, give them 2,000 years, and we'll see. Maybe there will be.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
We've already got Scientology, which is could be interpreted as a UFO religion.
hmm
It really could be in some
yeah,
aspects. Or the Realians, actually. Have you heard of
oh
the
yeah.
Realians?
hmm
Yeah, they're a bizarre, bizarre religion by this ex-French race car journalist guy who, encountered aliens who took him up in their ship, and he had an orgy with aliens and robots or something
Yeah,
like that. And he came back to tell the world to live in peace as a result. But that's fascinating. They've
yeah,
got their little thing. I don't think they have very many followers, but
yeah.
you never know. Give them
E-
a couple of
Even,
thousand years.
even Mormonism, kind of, because I mean, they're all on this planet called
Yeah,
Kolob.
right,
But
right.
that's sort of the thing I kind of find funny about these sort of more recent religions that have a sort of more like sci-fi story than the older like the Bible and whatnot. I kind of just see that as almost like a natural progression because
Yeah.
we're sort of incorporating a broader knowledge base
Yeah,
for the
absolutely.
people who formulate those religions. So.
Yeah. Plus, in the 21st century, it's a little more appealing to many people, especially younger
hmm
people, if your claim has a little bit of a high tech, sciencey edge to it. That it might be more appealing to a certain segment of society. It's interesting. That's why I think Carl Sagan pointed out
hmm
that these alien abduction claims. People have
hmm
all of a sudden got, aliens coming into their bedrooms and immobilizing them and taking them away for experiments or doing stuff to them right in bed or molesting them, right there in their bed. And he pointed out that, this story has been around for thousands of years, but it used to be, succubi or witches or the old
Yeah.
hag or these demons that would come into your room and do the same stuff. But now it's aliens in spaceships coming in. It sounds like it's the same sort of dream, nightmare, sleep paralysis type phenomena that has just been updated for our, modern scientific age. So it sounds a little more believable.
Yeah, I heard some, or actually, it might have been from your book actually, that before like sort of Roswell, and we had this like broad idea of the gray alien with the big eyes. Like people had alien abductions, but they were like much broader in description. Like little green men or things with antennas or something. And it wasn't until like we had like this general idea of what an alien is.
Yeah, yeah, that's culture. That's when culture kicks in and everybody gets on the same page and starts following the same script.
Yeah.
It goes back to the couple that were abducted. I think in the late 50s, I think it was, or early
hmm
60s, and or claimed to have been abducted and experimented on. And their description sort of grew and became popular, and Hollywood kicked in, and everybody's now they've all it's just a cultural convergence of yes, the standard alien is supposed to be a little guy with a big head and big huge eyes. It's just interesting. So now when there's a sighting, or an encounter, chances are it's going to be that sort of look to it.
hmm Yeah, I think one of the things you do you touch going back to the Simple Questions book. I think you do touch on the historicity of Jesus. If we can sort of go on that, I think I've sort of talked about this on my own private circles a lot. One of the arguments I keep hearing is that there are no historians who doubt the historicity of Jesus or something like that. I've heard that a lot. I haven't heard that like properly refuted. Have you heard of anything like that?
Oh, I'm sure you could find some historians who do. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, but the thing is, if you're talking about the question of was Jesus a
hmm
God man,
Yeah.
or was he, a human who just, influenced some people and
hmm
kind of, made an impact and got the ball rolling or something? That's a very valid, important question, and it should be investigated. It should be
hmm
debated.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I mean, I'm not so interested in that question because I don't think it really it gets to anything because okay, so what if he was just a man?
Mm-hmm.
So what if he was a god? Yeah, what we need to know, the answer to that is, what was he a god? That's the question that matters. Was he a
Mm-hmm.
god? Because that's what Christianity is based completely on that.
Mm-hmm.
If he was just a guy, or if he didn't exist at all, and this is somehow a conjured up religion by people at the time, or co-opted from other religions, as some suggest,
Mm-hmm.
well, we gotta figure that out. That's interesting and all, but so what? What I want to know is, was he a god or not? Is the evidence
Mm-hmm.
there that a god named Jesus, the
Mm-hmm.
God, came to earth and walked around in human form, in flesh and blood, and his name was Jesus? That's what we need to know. And what I point to is the evidence for that is severely lacking. That's the
Yeah.
problem. So I don't really, I don't get too bogged down in that, because I just stick to the bigger issue, the bigger questions. You're telling me Christianity is real and true, and that if I don't follow Jesus and believe in him, I will burn in hell forever, and that's the only way to heaven is through this God, as he claimed here in the Bible. Well, wow, that's a huge claim. Let's
Mm-hmm.
look into it. Let's look at the evidence. Let's see if the logic holds together. That's the route I always take. So I don't really, I don't get into the whole thing of what, because if I've looked into the whole God versus just a man kind of thing, and it gets frustrating at some point, because you can't really prove it either way. I don't think
Yeah.
you can't really prove he was just a guy. All you can do is show doubts about him being a god. You
Mm-hmm.
can you can show reasons for doubting, but it's just because of the time. He wasn't a royal. He wasn't some rich guy. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a big military general. There's just no historical records of his
Yeah.
existence as a human being. But that doesn't mean he didn't exist as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
To take the Christian side of it, okay? It doesn't. I mean, we shouldn't expect for there to have been a lot of historical records for this kind of a person who was kind of living a humble life. He wasn't a big deal. He wasn't Alexander the Great. He wasn't one of these kinds of people. So, that void there. And then, however, I'm honest about it. I'm fair to Christians. I say, well, there was this crater there in history where this guy made an impact. So, maybe there was a real guy in the center of it, a real human
Mm-hmm.
being who stirred it all up and got it going. I don't know. Maybe so. I'm willing to accept the possibility. That's fine. But who cares? I'm more interested in, was this guy a god? Was he
Mm-hmm.
really a magical being that ruled? Actually, remember the Holy Trinity. Jesus was God the Father too, the same thing, and the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit. So was this Jesus guy who was walking around in the Middle East, was he actually the creator of the universe, and he knew the future, and he knew, was he really this being? Well, wow, that's a big claim, and I need lots of evidence, and I don't see lots of evidence. That's the problem.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I always say. Like, even if we could like go back in time and actually see Jesus, and even like maybe see him performing miracles, I always think, oh, could we even really prove that he was actually God,
No,
or just
yep.
he could have been just he could have been a
The David, yeah,
prestidigitator, or but
yeah,
even then, even
yeah.
if we had to say the only explanation is a supernatural one, then that just kind of like ushers in the whole plethora of other potential supernatural. He could be a wizard or a
Yeah. Alien.
time lord or something.
Yeah. No, it could be an advanced alien with
Yeah.
technology we don't understand. But
Hmm.
yeah, I have a chapter on that in the book. I say, how can we be sure about miracles? I have one on miracles in general, and
Hmm.
explain how they're, regular real events are so often misinterpreted, and how unknown events are so often embraced as necessarily being magical just because we don't understand them. But I also have a chapter on the miracles of Jesus, and I
Hmm.
explain just what you're bringing up there. And I say, okay, let's go ahead and assume, let's agree that this guy was walking around and doing these wonderful magic tricks and healing people and stuff. Well, you know what? People are doing that today. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been to a Benny Hinn crusade. I've been to one. I've stood right before the stage and watched Benny Hinn cure people of AIDS,
Hmm.
hepatitis. I've seen it before my eyes.
Yeah.
Or maybe I didn't. Maybe there's another explanation for what was going on. And I've been to magician shows, David Copperfield. Imagine if we transported David Copperfield, the magician, back to Palestine 2,000 years ago. Do you think he might get a following and convince some people that he's, a miracle maker? I mean, I think he could.
Probably. Yeah.
He would make, camels disappear and stuff like that. And people be like, whoa, this guy must be a god. It would be easy to do. In fact,
Hmm.
we have a current 21st century example of this every day in India. There's a big problem with these men in India that go from village to village. They're called
Mm-hmm.
God men or these gurus,
Yeah.
and they're just con artists. They go from village to village and they do, these dime store magician tricks, and they freak out the local people who think, wow, these guys are magic. They know what they're doing. And then they'll bring their children to them who are having headaches or acting weird or something, and the magic man, does a, hocus pocus, blows dust in their face or whatever, and cures them, and then they collect a bunch of money and they head on to the next village. They're just taking advantage of poor people. And the same thing happens now. I don't think Christians who believe in the miracles of Jesus would say, they wouldn't have any problem saying, well, these guys are frauds in India who are doing this. These godmen in India are just scam artists. They're magicians
Mm-hmm.
tricking these poor rubes. Well, how do we know this wasn't happening back then? And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it was happening back then. I don't know about the case of Jesus, but it was. People were going around doing, quote, miracles, unquote, all the time. But it was really just, simple tricks, and people were just gullible. They weren't scientific thinkers. They weren't skeptics. They didn't know any better, and they fell for it.
Yeah. Like, and that's well, I've actually I've talked to someone about that in a online discussion, and he was actually saying, well, well, there were wizards back then too, so like they could have just been powered by demons themselves, or because even in Exodus where Moses he is challenging like the magicians of the Pharaoh, turning snakes into sticks into snakes or something like that.
Yeah. One thing I point out in the book is that people who use these supernatural, who claim supernatural causes for stuff, miracles, it was God or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because it also gets to the whole intelligent design versus evolution thing, or the creationism versus evolution thing. Um, just saying it's a miracle or God did it is not an explanation,
Yeah.
and they try to balance that against the claim that a scientist will make and say, no, no, it's nature. But that's not a fair equation. It's not a balanced comparison, because the scientist doesn't just say nature did it. A scientist says it's a natural cause, and here's how, and explains what happened, the
Mm-hmm.
actual process of the hurricane or the earthquake. The earthquake, the ground shook because there are
Mm-hmm.
tremendous forces under the ground, and big slabs of rock shifted position, suddenly, and that's what an earthquake is. It was a fault, a crack in the earth here. And they explain it. They don't just say nature. And yet, when you get to miracles, well, how did life, change, and how did life start? Oh, God did it. That's not an explanation. Miracle,
Mm-hmm.
not an explanation. Explain how He did it. That is an explanation, and that's why, I point out in the chapter on creationism, intelligent design. I point out, imagine if Charles Darwin put forth a theory 150 years ago and just said nature did it.
Mm-hmm.
End of book. The origin of species, nature did it, end
Yeah.
of book. I mean, that would be nothing. It would be meaningless. And yet, that is what religious people try
Mm-hmm.
to do when they explain things that happen and things that have happened. They say, God did it,
Mm-hmm.
end of book, case closed, And
Yeah.
it's not the same thing. It's not an explanation. It's not at all. I mean, you need to explain what happened.
Yeah.
Same problem you find with ESP and psychics and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. Is they go, oh yeah, yeah, I can read minds. Something's going on. Really? Well, explain it. What is your
Yeah.
theory of psychic readings? Explain what's going on in your head and my head, or explain how a medium is talking to dead people. Let's work this out. How's the information traveling across time or through a dimension? Explain this, please. They don't
Mm-hmm.
do it. Don't even try.
Yeah, I mean, again, whenever I'm posed with God created, I'm always like, how did He create the universe? What did He make it out with? What tools did He use? Like, how did He acquire the knowledge to create a universe? And it's kind of
Yeah, yeah. I mean, curiosity, whether you believe or not,
yeah.
okay, fine. Even if you're determined never to become an atheist, that's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
still, don't stop being curious.
Yeah.
Explain why. How did God cause this earthquake? How did
Mm-hmm.
He, what did He send, some sort of magic beam from heaven that struck,
Mm-hmm.
the San Andreas fault and made the earth shake? Or what? What is the process? What is going on? I want to know. Why
Yeah.
would you be curious?
I mean, just any claim for the supernatural. I mean, it's basically. I mean, I don't believe in supernatural, especially because if there is anything out there, if we were ever to demonstrate that it exists, it would cease to be supernatural. It'd just be a
Yeah.
previously non-understood aspect of the supernatural of the natural world.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right, man. You're exactly right. Supernatural is just, it's one of two things. Anything that somebody says is supernatural is one of two things. It's either something we haven't figured out yet and don't understand
Hmm.
the natural reasons for it, or it's made up nonsense that doesn't exist and never will exist.
Hmm.
Supernatural is one of two things, you know?
Yeah.
And even even if some sort of a god or gods do exist, well, I would still say, okay, they're part of the universe, then therefore they're natural, and one day maybe we'll figure them out and understand them, you know? So yeah, it's not supernatural.
Just getting back on just the general subject of your trilogy of the 50 something books. Like, did you feel that when you do you feel there was like progression from like one to these for believing in God to popular beliefs to simple questions for Christians?
Yeah, the first one I wrote was 50 Reasons People Give for Believing in a God. And that one sort of grew out of my world travels because I
Hmm.
talked to many Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Christians in many different places and many different, social strata. And so one of the things I observed is that, you know what, regardless of what these people believe, they all seem to be reaching into the same, they all, is that you? You okay?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
that's my smoke detector. It
oh,
does
okay.
that. It's gonna do that two more times.
All right. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay. Okay. Uh, but with the book 50 Reasons People Give for Believing in a God grew out of my world travels in the sense that I noticed something common among people who believed in a god or gods, regardless of what those god or gods were and what the religion was. So Hindus, Muslims, Christians, they're all giving me the same justifications for belief, even though their religions are totally contradictory and they can't all be right. So, for example, they'd be saying, well, the world is just too complex. It can't have just happened on its own. It can't just be nature.
There it is again.
The, the world is too complex. So, therefore, I know that Allah is real, Muhammad is his prophet, and the Quran is absolutely true. And yet, if I'm in Africa talking to a Christian, they did say, well, look at the complexity of the world. Look how beautiful the world is. It's so complex. It has to be God. And therefore, I know Jesus is real and I know the Bible is absolutely true. And then and then you go to, I'll speak to Hindus who say, well, I know the gods of Hinduism are true and real because we prayed and my uncle was healed. He was deathly sick. He was going to die. The doctor said he had no chance. We prayed and Ganesh healed him and he's healed. So I know Ganesh is real. He's a real God. And yet when I go to Jamaica and I'm talking to Christians, they say, well, we prayed to Jesus and my aunt was cured of her cancer. So we know Jesus must be real. Can't be it out. And so that book, 50 Reasons People Give for Believing in a God, is a sort of generic skeptic's response, not generic, but a skeptic's response to these common justifications for belief that one hears around the world in many different religions. And then 50 popular beliefs that people give for that people think are true is my skeptical take on 50 of the most popular, what I consider to be unlikely to be true claims, and they're all in there: UFOs, psychics, ghosts, haunted houses, alternative medicine, medical quackery, doomsday predictions, end of the world stuff. It's all in there. And that was a fun book to write, by the way. I
Hmm.
really enjoy that because these things are, even if they're not true, they're fun to think about. They
Hmm.
really are. I love like cryptozoology and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I love that. And the thing is, in the tone I took with that book, the direction I took is not to debunk and say, no, no, this is stupid. Don't believe in Bigfoot. Here's the reasons why it doesn't make sense. What I would do is I would give the reasons for doubting the Bigfoot claim
Hmm.
and explain why it's very unlikely that Bigfoot is real. But then I would say, hey, if you're attracted to finding monsters, unknown creatures, if you're attracted to cryptozoology and you think it's cool, well, you know what? That's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. But hey, consider this. Science is doing it. They're actually searching for monsters right now in the oceans, in the Amazon, and they're finding new insects, new microbes that are absolutely freaky. You know, the deep ocean is so much of a mystery still to us. Who knows what's down there? You know,
Hmm.
that's the game you want to get on. That's where you want to look. You know, you can't dip a net in the ocean without finding some new kind of weird, bizarre microbes that have never been, seen or named yet by science. That's what you want. That's the game you want to be in on. So, don't give up on reality. Don't start going for all these freaky, unlikely things. Who cares about ghosts when and mediums when parallel universes might be real? Check
Hmm.
out the math and the science on that. Is that freaky? Parallel universes, trillions, infinite number of universes all around us. I mean, that is bizarre. you know if you're into finding freaky creatures and beings, well, check out astrobiology, the search for extraterrestrials.
Hmm.
That is amazing. The extremophiles right here on earth, the weird
Hmm.
places that creatures live and exist. And then after that, I wanted to write a book specific to Christianity, because my first book that dealt with the religion was very general and just reached kind of any religious people. And Christianity's, the world's most popular religion, is so popular, has so much of an influence. And unfortunately, there's so much negativity, so much prejudice and hate that comes out of Christianity, even though most Christians are very good people, very mean well, they want well for the world. They want peace. They just want to raise their families, do their job, and be good people. I mean, most Christians are like that. But still, you can't deny that Christianity really does cause a lot of problems. It really does. You only have to look at the fact that 46% of American adults think the world is 6,000 years old. I mean, that is, stunningly ignorant. That is
Yeah.
horrible. And it's an offshoot of their Christian belief. And, that's a danger for the world, and for America and for the world, is when you've got people that are taking these anti-science stances and refusing to budge, because they think their God demands it of them. That is scary. That is a really bad place for the world to be. And so I'm trying to address these kind of things in a productive, positive way that hopefully Christians will at least give some consideration to.
Yeah. So I mean, well, are you thinking of doing a fourth 50 something something book?
Well, yeah. By the way, I had different names for all these, and my
Hmm.
publisher insists on the 50 title. 50
Ah,
title.
yeah.
My publisher is the numerologist obsessed with numbers, not me. Okay,
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah, definitely. There's always one. I mean, I just finished a book called Think, which is a really cool book. This one comes out in October, November, and it's for everybody. And it's an explanation of how to think clearly in everyday life, how to think
Hmm.
like a scientist, real practical advice, real step-by-step instructions for how to wade through all the madness and
Hmm.
crooks and nonsense out there, and also how to eat right, how to stay active, these kind of things to keep your brain healthy and
Hmm.
functioning well. And so that's a cool book. That one comes out. And after that, I've got a few ideas for some books, but one I probably will write. I think it's about number 2 or 3 in the queue right now, but it's probably 50, something like 50 simple questions for every Muslim.
Oh
So I
wow.
want to, yeah, I want to address Islam and just
Hmm.
point out the same basic skeptical questions. And although that may be the one book that gets me in trouble, I hope it
Yeah.
doesn't. But I
Mm.
mean, I don't know. I'll just avoid no cartoons of Muhammad on the cover, nothing like
Mm,
that. Maybe
yeah.
maybe I can get away with it, but I think definitely, the Middle East. I mean, I've been there, and there's wonderful people. I mean, I've been to Jordan, I've been to Syria, I've been to Egypt. Wonderful, wonderful people there. And like I said about Christians, I don't care about Muslims any less than I do anybody else. So I
Hmm.
want them to be good skeptics too, and I want them to lead safer, more efficient lives through skepticism. So why not write a book for them too? So,
Yeah. I mean,
I plan to do it.
yeah. I mean, that I'd love to read that just because again, I don't know all that much about Islam, so I think that might actually be a great educational tool for non-Muslims as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. All my books are written for skeptics as well, for non-believers as well,
Hmm.
because I think it presents effective ways that skeptics and non-believers can, have productive dialogue with
Hmm.
believers and not just argue with them. And even my book on UFOs and Bigfoot and that stuff, I point out that it's not enough to just say, your claim doesn't make any sense, you don't have any evidence, shut up. That doesn't get you anywhere. You need to
Yeah.
understand, like, if you want to confront or interact with a Roswell UFO crash believer, it's not enough to say, you can't prove it, case closed. That's not enough. You're not going to impress them with that. But if you can tell them about Project Mogul and you can say, hey, you know what? You're right. There was a government cover up at Roswell. You're right. There was some top secret, shenanigans going on. You're absolutely right. And you're right. Something did crash there. But guess what? It was Project Mogul. It was a Cold War top secret program for listening to Soviet nuclear tests halfway around the world with these high altitude, balloon air structure things. And you're right, it wasn't just a weather balloon like the government said. They lied. When you can explain that, you're probably going to get further with a Roswell believer than if you just said, you're stupid. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Muslims, Hindus, Christians. If you want them to really think more more scientifically, if you want them to be good skeptics, you're going to have to reach them on a level far beyond just saying, you can't prove your God's real. Shut up. That's not going to work. Not going to work.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've had a great experience here talking with you this afternoon. I definitely look forward to why you should question everything.
Yeah, I'll make sure you get a copy. I'll send you a copy, man.
Awesome, that's great. And all right, and okay. So this has been GuyPHarrison, author of 50 Simple Questions for Every Christian, as well as 50 Popular Beliefs People Think Are True, and 50 Reasons People give for Believing in God. These are all
a God. Let me correct you there. A God. Yeah, not specific. Yeah. Could be anybody's God.
God or God's, yes.
Yeah. That book is for anyone and everyone who believes in God's.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, Tim, thank you so much for having me, man. It's
the pleasure was all mine.
Thanks. Keep up the good work. Keep asking good questions. Keep doing interesting shows, okay?
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, buddy. Take care. Bye.
Okay, you too. This has been the Secular Nation Podcast. Michael X is our technical director. Our executive producer is Tom Alchiori, and I, of course, am your host, Tim Brannan. You can email us at podcast@secularnation.us. This podcast is brought to you by the Atheist Alliance of America. If you would like to become a member, you can go to our website at atheistallianceamerica.org. Click on the support tab and hit membership. This is Tim Brannan of the Secular Nation Podcast, signing off.